Hello everyone. So today I'll be talking about the esophageal diseases. Okay. Uh, there are six type of esophageal diseases. One is the gastroesophageal reflux disease, the hiatus hernia, the Barrett's esophagus, the motility disorders, the esophageal perforation, as well as the fistula. So before going on to the diseases, let's give a glance about the anatomy of the esophagus. It is a fibromuscular tube which is around 25 centimeters long in an adult. It extends from C6, that is at the lower end of the pharynx, to the cardiac end of the stomach, that is T11. Short muscular tube lined with non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, and it mainly helps to transmit the nutrition in 3 seconds from larynx to the stomach. So the esophagus is mainly divided into the cervical part, the thoracic part, as well as the abdominal part. It usually shows four normal constrictions. That is one at the level of cricopharynx, which is 15 centimeters from the upper incisor. Then we have at the level of arch of aorta, which is around 23 to 25 centimeters from the upper incisor. And another one is the left main bronchus, which is 27 to 28 centimeters from the upper incisor. Then it pierces the diaphragm, that is around 40 centimeters from the upper incisor. At the level of C6, it is around 15 centimeters from the central incisor, and at the level of aortic arch, that is T4, which is around 25 centimeters from the incisor, and at the level of the left main bronchus, that is T5, which is around 28 centimeters, and then we have at the level of esophageal hiatus, that is around 40 centimeters. Now, coming on to the gastroesophageal reflux, it is an hypomotility disorder with abnormal reflux of the gastric contents through the esophagus into the laryngopharynx, causing laryngeal and pharyngeal symptoms. It produces 5 to 10% of daily reflux symptoms and 40% on a monthly basis. And in certain cases, strictures occurs, that is around 2%, and it can get converted into Barrett's esophagus, which is less than 1 centimeter. It is associated with sliding type of hiatus hernia. Uh, Coming on to the etiology, it could be mainly because of the inappropriate functioning of the lower esophageal sphincter, or tobacco, alcohol, fatty foods, or chocolates could also be one of the factors, and even pregnancy and some of the associated conditions like hiatus hernia, postnasal drip, or psychological causes. Here, one of the main factor here is because of the length of the intra-abdominal esophagus and the angle between the esophagus and the fundus of the stomach. And in this condition, the manometric length will be around 2 to 5 centimeters and intraluminal pressure will be around 0 to 30 millimeter per mercury. Most common cause of laryngitis, non-productive cough and non-cardiac chest pain. Symptoms are mainly heartburn exacerbated on consuming heavy meal, and other symptoms may be atypical chest pain, dysphagia, globus nocturnal asthma, hoarseness of voice, foreign body sensation in the throat, dental erosion, throat clearing. Some of the signs which can be seen is mainly the laryngitis, congested arytenoids, interarytenoid and nasal congestion. And this is the endoscopic picture of the condition, that is the gastroesophageal reflux disease. This is mainly done while doing an esophagoscopy. And certain other investigations are mainly 24 hours pH monitoring and esophageal manometry and biletic probe for bile reflex. And other investigations are mainly the barium swallow as well as the chest x-ray. This is the condition what you see in a barium swallow. See, this is a condition where in this is the condition where you get it in gastroesophageal reflux disease. That is the esophagitis. Okay. Treatment mainly is lifestyle modification, absence of alarm symptoms, short course of proton pump inhibitors such as lansoprazole 30 milligram per day, or proton pump inhibitors up to 30 milligram BD such as lansoprazole, or lansoprazole 30 milligram morning and ranitidine 300 milligram at night. Okay, and we can also give prokinetics like domperidone, and on endoscopy esophagitis or stricture or ulceration, then re-endoscopy after 6 weeks to ensure healing. Age more than 40 years, always endoscopy is advised, and if there is some abnormality, then we have to go for biopsy. What is the role of surgery here? Indications: if there is failure of medical line of treatment with positive pH and manometry, proven esophagitis. What is the surgery we do? Surgery is mainly operation 360-degree Naison's fundoplication, or we can do an open laparoscopic approach where we have fixation of the wrap to the gastroesophageal junction or the crura to prevent slippage. So as you can see, this is the esophagus, this is the diaphragm, and this is the fundus of the stomach. What happens in Nissen's fundoplication is we wrap this thing, we wrap the fundus over and we suture it. Okay, the fundus is wrapped around backside to the esophagus, and then what happens? The wrap secured with sutures to anchor lower esophagus below the diaphragm. Okay. This is the same thing as I showed you earlier. What happens? It reduces dysphagia, wrap and crural repair with 48 Fahrenheit or larger bogey. Complications in the surgery could be a perforation, a dysphagia, or a gas bloat, or even a chest pain. If wrap gets slipped post-op period, then contrast barium swallow is mandatory. Complications are mainly ulceration, stricture, and bleeding from the ulcer. Management of all these complications are mainly we have to take multiple biopsies, aggressive medical management, CT and endoluminal ultrasound. Benign strictures, we have to give full dose medical treatment, gentle balloon dilatations, as well as the biopsy has to be needed. Now coming on to the another condition, that is the Barrett's esophagus. Here there is change in normal stratified squamous epithelium to the intestinal columnar epithelium. It's a precancerous condition affecting the distal esophagus. Risk of malignancy is more in this condition, and presence of more than 3 cm of columnar lined epithelium, 0.5 to 2% in this, 1% developed high grade dysplasia, and 0.3% have invasive cancer. This is seen in gastroesophageal reflux disease and also in smokers. This is a esophagoscopy, endoscopic picture. You see a Barrett's esophagus here. This is a condition where you see the Barrett's esophagus, and this is the normal lining. Okay, this is also mainly seen in the lower esophageal sphincter. Okay, the histology, it is mainly lined by the stratified squamous epithelium, then which gets later converted to the intestinal metaplasia. Diagnosis. How do we diagnose it? It's mainly diagnosed by doing a barium swallow, esophagoscopy, and taking multiple biopsy from 4 different quadrants. See, this is seen in the lower esophageal sphincter. This is the normal lower esophageal sphincter, and this is what you see in a Barrett's esophagus. It is mostly congested and the surface is irregular here. This is what you see in a barium swallow. Can you see this condition over here? This is mainly seen in the lower esophageal sphincter. How do you manage this condition? We can start with proton pump inhibitor. Okay, and based on the fully differentiated epithelium, follow-up has to be done every 3 years. In case of mild dysplasia, we can give full dose proton pump inhibitor and follow up every 6 months. And in case of severe dysplasia, confirmed with the 2 separate pathologists, radical therapy, esophageal resection, if fit, or if unfit, then go for argon beam or photodynamic therapy. Okay, this is the third condition, what you see, that is the hiatus hernia. Here what happens, there is a displacement of the part of stomach into the chest through the diaphragm, commonly seen in elderly more than 40 years of age. Symptoms are mainly heartburn, regurgitations, pain while swallowing, belching chest pain, shortness of breath, etc. There are mainly 4 types. One is a sliding type, that there will be a raised intra-abdominal pressure which can push the cardia into the posterior mediastinum in the line of esophagus. Due to the widening of muscular hiatal tunnel and circumferential laxity of phrenoesophageal ligament. Clinical features are mainly the same features of reflux, which leads to ulceration, stenosis, and hematemesis. Okay, as you see here, this is the normal esophagus which you see, and this is the hiatus hernia where the the diaphragm, because of this, the esophagus is pushed, and this is the cause which will later lead into a gastroesophageal reflux disease. This is what you see in a barium swallow, the sliding hiatus hernia. This is the hernia which you see. This is the gastric mucosal fold. This is the diaphragm, and this is the gastroesophageal junction. Second type of hiatus hernia is the rolling paroesophageal hiatus hernia, where there will be an upward dislocation of the gastric funds alongside a normal position cardia. Due to the localized defect of phrenoesophageal ligament, the clinical features, there will be no signs of reflux, as gastroesophageal junction remains below the diaphragm and angle between the esophagus and the stomach is maintained. Main features are mainly the dysphagia, dyspnea, chest pain, postprandial blotting, and regurgitation. Widened hiatus. Okay, and type 4, this is mainly the giant hiatal hernia. What happens here? This is the gastroesophageal reflux junction. This is the omentum, and this is the herniatic sac, okay, of the stomach. This is what you see in a barium swallow, that is the paroesophageal hernia. Here, what you see is the barium in fundus of the stomach above the diaphragm. This is the diaphragm and this is the gastroesophageal junction below the diaphragm. Third type is mainly the combined sliding, rolling or mixed hernia. Type 3 characterized by an upward dislocation of both the cardia and the gastric fundus. Type 4 hiatus hernia is when an additional organ, usually the colon, herniates as well. There will be bowel obstruction and complications. Coming on to how do you diagnose it? First, we can diagnose it by doing a chest X-ray. With patient in the upright position, can diagnose a hiatal hernia if it shows an air fluid level behind the cardiac shadow. Second one is by using a fiber-optic esophagoscopy, which is very useful in the diagnosis and classification of hiatal hernia because the scope can be retroflexed. Third one is by doing a manometry study, and management is by doing a lifestyle modification, and we can go with the medical management by giving H2 blockers, proton pump inhibitors and prokinetics. Surgical management is mainly fundoplications, and the surgery what we do is mainly the Nissen's 360-degree posterior fundoplication. Okay, now coming on to the motility disorders. It is further classified into the upper esophageal, the esophageal body as well as the lower esophageal sphincter. Upper esophageal disorders and neuromuscular disorders. In the esophageal body, we have the diffuse esophageal spasm, nutcracker esophagus, non-specific esophageal dysmotility, and in the lower esophagus we can have cardia or hypertensive lower esophageal sphincter. Primary disorders are mainly the diffuse esophageal spasm, the nutcracker esophagus, non-specific esophageal dysmotility, and secondary disorders are mainly the severe esophagitis, scleroderma, diabetes, myasthenia gravis, Parkinsonism, and stroke. Now, coming on to the upper esophageal motility disorders. First, we'll come on to the neuromuscular disorders. It could be because of stroke, Parkinsonism, poliomyelitis, and it could be because of upper esophageal dysfunction. Clinical features are mainly the localizers has upper dysphagia with seconds of swallowing. They may be coughing as well as aspiration and choking. Motility disorders of the body and the lower esophageal sphincter. That disorders are mainly the achalasia cardia, hypertensive lower esophageal sphincter, the diffuse esophageal spasm, the nutcracker esophagus, and the non-specific esophageal dysmotility. Coming on to one of the important conditions, that is the achalasia cardia. It is mainly the failure of relaxation of the lower esophageal sphincter. There will be progressive dilatation and hypertrophy of the esophageal wall, as you see. There will be degeneration of the ganglion cells of Auerbach's, that is the myenteric plexus, and it is always indistinguishable from Chagas disease. It mainly has dysphagia to liquids and then to solids, and later will have regurgitation. This is what you see. This is the normal esophagus. This is the lower esophageal sphincter. Because of the obstruction in the lower esophageal sphincter, what happens? There will be the dilatation of the esophagus in a achalasia cardiac condition. Achalasia cardia. The incidence is around 6 per 1 lakh population, seen in young women and middle-aged men. Pathology is presumed to be idiopathic or infectious, can be due to neurogenic degeneration or emotional stress, trauma, or it could be because of destruction of the nerves to the lower esophageal sphincter and degeneration of neuromuscular function of the body. Clinical presentations may need dysphagia to liquids and solids, regurgitation, weight loss, retrosternal chest pain, recurrent chest infection, aspiration of stagnant esophageal content, and nocturnal cough. Investigations are we can go ahead with the flexible endoscopy, barium swallow, and then diagnosis confirmation by esophageal manometry, where you can find out the failure of relaxation of lower esophageal sphincter, absence of esophageal peristalsis, and raised resting pressure in the esophagus. This is what you see in a esophageal barium swallow, where there will be constriction in the lower esophageal sphincter, which leads to the dilatation of the esophagus. What are the medical management? Medical management, we can go ahead with the sublingual nitroglycerin, nitrates or calcium channel blockers, injections of botulinum toxin. Surgical conditions, we can go ahead with endoscopic balloon dilatation or cardiomyotomy. Then we go ahead with another condition, that is the diffuse esophageal spasm, which is a very rare condition where there is non-peristaltic high pressure contraction of high amplitude occurs in the smooth muscle of lower two-thirds of the esophagus. They will usually have severe retrosternal pain during swallowing associated with uh, diffuse esophageal spasm. Now, coming on to the investigations of it, we can do a manometry, barium swallow, manage conservatively with calcium channel blockers, botulinum toxin, surgery, which is rarely done. The only option here is do a esophageal myotomy. This is what you see in a barium swallow. It looks like a corkscrew sign. Then we have another condition, that is a nutcracker esophagus, present with the non-cardiac chest pain associated with dysphagia. Manometry shows normal peristaltic waves of high amplitude in distal esophagus, and contractions are peristaltic here. Eosinophilic esophagitis symptoms relate to the same as the esophageal dysmotility. Endoscopically, fixed esophageal rings, luminal narrowing, furrows or exudates. Biopsy confirms as eosinophilic infiltration with the esophageal epithelium. Treatments are mainly steroids, topical steroids. Avoidance of food allergens. Then we have another condition called as the esophageal diverticulae, mostly asymptomatic, frequently found on endoscopic. Two types, congenital and acquired. Acquired mostly are pulsant type, incoordinated peristalsis and functional obstruction, increased pressure at specific point in esophageal wall. No specific treatment is required here. Then we have the esophageal perforation, a rare condition, has high mortality, and Boerhaave syndrome, spontaneous perforation, seen following a bout of vomiting after the heavy meal, sudden onset of chest pain, and uh, esophageal perforation can lead to subcutaneous emphysema, hydropneumothorax may be present. Investigations following intrapleural drain insertion, that is the ICD, as well as the esophagogram can be done. CT scan with barium also can be done. Most cases, lower end of esophagus perforates and mostly tend to rupture of the to the left pleural cavity, higher end to mainly onto the right. Okay, this is what you see in a perforation where there will be a contrast leakage, and this is what you see a Riles tube. Uh, that's it. And treatment, patients present with the 24 hours rupture extending to the pleural cavity, Surgical management plus thorough pleural toilet and closure of the defect with interrupted sutures over T-tube placement of two chest drains. And then we can place a gastrotomy tube for gastric decompression plus feeding jejunostomy can be done. Stable patients, conservative treatment, that is perforation contained within the mediastinum, best treated conservatively. Delayed diagnosis, insert chest drain, transfer to specialist, complex resection and reconstruction has to be. Other major causes are iatrogenic perforation following instrumentation of the esophagus and rigid endoscopy, flexible endoscopy, or during anti-reflux surgery. Degree of pleural and mediastinal contamination plus systemic sepsis determines if surgery is required or not. And then feeding jejunostomy has to be done. Esophageal perforation, high perforation usually with the perforation of pharyngeal pouch during the endoscopy, presents mainly with neck pain, retrosternal pain, subcutaneous emphysema. Mid or lower esophageal perforation, commonly it is due to the dilatation of the stricture. Then, cervical esophagus perforation without surgery, non-operative management, intensive observation plus reassessment. Patient has to be nil per oral, IV fluids, IV PPI, that is the proton pump inhibitors, antibiotics, analgesics, intercostal drain, nasogastric decompression, enteral nutrition feeding jejunostomy, and regular reassessment has to be done. Surgery is mainly the repair of the esophageal defect following debridement and lavage of the mediastinal and pleural contamination of the mediastinum and pleura. Then we have to do a primary repair. Esophageal stents and complications such as migration, bleeding, and stricture formation has to be done. Then we have another condition that is a tracheoesophageal fistula. This is mainly because of the perforation or usually seen in advanced malignancy of esophagus. Secondary to radiotherapy, it can be congenital. Symptoms can be coughing, choking during feeding, pneumonia, and respiratory distress. Management is mainly the placement of stents in trachea, esophagus, or both. Parenteral nutrition should be done or by feeding jejunostomy. Congenital cases, surgery within 48 hours has to be done. This is the classification of esophageal fistula. There is type A, here the esophageal astrasia without tracheoesophageal fistula. There is no fistula. Type B, what we see is there is esophageal atresia with the proximal tracheoesophageal fistula. This is the fistula which is seen. This is type C, esophageal atresia with distal tracheoesophageal fistula. Type D, it is a esophageal atresia with proximal and distal esophageal fistula. And type E, it is a tracheoesophageal fistula without any esophageal atresia.